Hi, I'm Blake Kohler, the CEO of Pulse for Good, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about burnout from emotional labor. Now, before we go into exactly what it is, I have a quick story. And for those of you who join webinars, I always have quick stories, so sorry. But years ago, I was driving in Australia, and driving down the road, and all of a sudden, the van that I was driving in stopped going. The engine stopped. I wasn't exactly sure what happened. We kind of pulled over the side of the road. It was then at that moment where I realized I had ran out of petrol, or gas, for those in the U.S., right? The fuel that we had to power this very powerful engine had just burned up and was gone. And naturally, you had to refill it and get on your way, and it was an inconvenient process. Well, the same experience that I've had is happening all over the world inside of nonprofits, and perhaps you've experienced this as well. But what's happening is people are using up all of the fuel, the energy they have, doing incredibly powerful work, but we need them to not burn out. And maybe you're resonating with that. Maybe you're feeling burned out. Maybe you're a leader and you're experiencing some of this as well. Maybe you've seen it in your staff. Today we're going to talk about burnout from emotional labor, right? How it impacts our staff and some things we can do about it. Because if I were to bet, I would assume this is something that is already affecting your organization. And if it's not already affecting your organization, it's something that's going to affect you in the future. So we'll go through it. We'll end with some practical advice on ways that you can try and help with burnout. And we'll explain what burnout is along the way and how it's happening. And maybe some of the patterns you can disrupt inside of your organization. So first, burnout is the hidden crisis inside of nonprofits. It is honestly the silent killer. I've talked to many organizations across the country who are experiencing turnover inside of the organizations because of people, not because they dislike the job, or because they dislike the work, or because they dislike the organization, or even because of pay. It's because they simply can't do it anymore. The emotional demands of the job are too intense for what they're doing, especially in a day and age where the thanks from society, the gratitude from society, is decreasing day by day in nonprofit work. So burnout is rising across the nonprofit sector. Many organizations treat burnout as an individual problem, that so-and-so was burned out, not that something in our system or something in our organization or a problem has caused the burnout. Research also shows that burnout is primarily a system failure, right? It's not a failure of the individual, of the willpower, of how much you can pay. It's a failure of systems that constantly put people in a state of stress. And you may be saying, wait a minute, putting people in a state of stress, we're a nonprofit. We deal with people in stress all the time. It's a stressful thing. I can't handle that. Well, you can handle it, and there's ways to be able to fix it. And we're going to talk about some of those different ways. So here's what we're covering, right? We're covering why it's rising, how emotional labor contributes to burnout, why traditional solutions fail, and what you can do to build a sustainable workforce system that allows people to have their best chance at overcoming burnout. Now, notice I said best chance at overcoming burnout. There's still things that are beyond your control. But what we want to do is build the system that works best so that those that can continue to remain in it. Now, you may be saying, hey, what about myself? And in fact, sadly, it's one of the things that I see often is some of the groups that get burned out the fastest are those executive directors, those chief operating officers, those people that bear the stress all day, every day. And for you, some of these things will work as well. So pay attention and stay tuned as we run through them. All right. So the reality of nonprofits is you do incredible work all the time in a very stressful environment. You're underpaid. You're, underthanked, maybe is the right way to describe that. Right? You're in a situation where you're doing work that sometimes you're vilified for. And that is heavy. Dealing with poverty, with trauma, with social issues, all with work that requires a high amount of emotional labor and capacity can lead to burnout very quickly. Right? So how do we handle this? How do we step beyond it? Right? Now, there's a lot of structural pressures on nonprofits. There's the need for funding, right? And funding that can go up and down depending on the whims of organizations or of government or all sorts of things. You deal with staffing shortages. Already, it's hard to get enough people to work for you, let alone keeping them employed, right? The amount of services that people want you to provide is continually increasing. And the administrative requirements, the compliance requirements, continually grows. All of this leads to a sustained pressure, right? A strain in your workforce. Employees are juggling more and more without being paid more and more. And it's hard, right? Lower compensation in nonprofits makes the appeal of going outside of a nonprofit even greater. And that high emotional demand with limited structural support really sets up the perfect storm for burnout. Leaders are seeing more and more people leave, chronic vacancies in their organizations. You're probably sitting on a job posting right now that you can't fill, right? You get declining morale, people are upset, their friends are leaving, all sorts are happening, and you have higher turnover. It's a pretty bleak picture. And I don't mean to paint this picture as something that is unovercomable. It is something you can tackle, but it's important to understand the realities of it. And by understanding the emotional labor involved in the work you do, you can paint a picture accurately in a way that allows you then to address it. Examples of emotional labor are wide-ranging, right? It's the caseworker that's visiting somebody on the street and interacts with them and with all of the complexities and challenges that comes with it. It's the counselors that have the constant battle of absorbing the shared trauma of the traumatic stories that they're being shared with. It's the leaders trying to project confidence in uncertain times, right? Trying to be able to share everything will be all right when you're not certain funding's going to come in or how that process is going to work. It's the emotional dissonance between trying to paint on a happy face and realizing the struggle that you're going on behind the scenes. The longer you deal with a happy face but sad insides, I don't know the right way to say that, right? That creates a long-term emotional strain, right? When I can't truly show what I'm actually feeling, that creates this little subtle pressure that builds and builds over time. And eventually your capacity for emotional regulation erodes, and you're not able to maintain that facade, which is often what it is, of being in control and okay with the current situation. So that burnout, knowing that it's more than just fatigue, right? It's an emotional exhaustion. It can lead to reduced engagement and motivation. And it literally affects our ability to think. There's cognitive impacts on us. And in the same way, it's really hard when you're exhausted from not sleeping or from working out hard. When you're carrying an emotional load, it dramatically impacts your ability to think through processes. Traditionally, when we look at all of these situations, what we've done is we say, hey, you know what you need is a vacation or a therapist or self-care or mental health apps. And traditionally what we've done is we've said, you have a problem, here's something to treat the symptoms of your problem. Now the problem with that is when we return, it's not as though the emotional labor that we need to do our jobs has lessened. My vacation can be wonderful and I can feel great and recharged. But when I return, if I return to the exact same drivers of burnout, I'm going to get burnout just again. In the same way that if my car ran out of gas, I could put a little bit into it and go down the road and feel like everything's fine, but run out of gas again, right? And so if the real drivers of burnout are excessive workload, our lack of transparency, our unclear expectations, our limited psychological safety, our lack of meaningful feedback, or a bunch of different things that are actually organizational constraints, if that's the case, then what we need to do is build a way to be able to continually refuel the people that are working with us. If we can do that and consider burnout to be a design problem, right? Design problem meaning we need to design in refueling checks along the way, not a single problem like a sickness that somebody has, right? That you just need to take some sort of treatment and then you'll feel better. If we can consider it as a design problem, we can then design around improving it. We can add those fuel stops along the way. So we're going to look at 3 quick principles and then 1 sustaining principle overall. So the first principle is visibility, right? Organizations can't manage what they cannot see, right? And measuring your staff experience is one of the best ways to be able to get visibility in what's going on. You want to understand where you need to put the fuel stops along the way to refuel people in the moment as opposed to treating them at the end, right? You want to identify risks before they escalate. Principle 2 is leadership accountability, right? Your managers shape most of the daily staff experience. Helping them understand their accountability for refueling their staff matters a lot. Leaders must recognize early signs of burnout, right? It doesn't help when you're far from a gas station run out of gas. What helps is when you can see that I'm running out of gas, so I get to a gas station. And then the last part for that leadership accountability is making sure you're supporting sustainable performance and psychological safety. You want to be able to ask of people a lot, but something they can actually achieve and then give them the psychological safety, that need that they have to be able to say the things they want to say without fear of retribution. If you can provide those two types of things, you then get the places in place to provide that refueling that they need. And then the third principle is supporting emotional labor. Understanding and naming it for what it is. Staff do not have an endless supply of the ability to have compassion. Right? Compassion fatigue is real. Right? You need to provide autonomy, make sure there's fairness, and support recovery for these very challenging things. You need to create psychological safe environments so they can share with you when they're in stages of burnout without having the fear that they're going to be fired or retaliated against for being able to tell you, hey, I need help, or I'm running out of energy. All of this then, these three principles, right, need to be supported with a continual stream of feedback. Think about the situation with running out of gas, right? For any of you that have been there, if you had just looked down at your gas gauge earlier, you would have been able to know, I should have gotten gas. The same thing's true. When we're soliciting feedback continually and constantly from the people that work with us, we're then able to, just like a gas gauge, understand where we are compared to where we want to get to, and understand where we need to refuel or pause or provide support in a whole bunch of different ways. Now, there's tons of benefits of continuous feedback, right? You can detect early warning signs. You can track improvements over time. You can identify structural problems. You can enable proactive decisions by your leadership team instead of reactive decisions. All sorts of different things that you can do to try and use this feedback to improve and find those places you need to refuel. And when you develop those sustainable systems, and notice I'm not telling you what the sustainable systems are, because those should be developed from the feedback that you get for your organization. I could tell you that you should be able to do X, Y, or Z, but that will only work for very particular organizations. What you need is to review your information, find the areas you need to set up your fueling stations, where you need to refuel, based off of what people are telling you. And then from there, you can build these sustainable systems. And when you get these sustainable systems, you get stronger staff retention, you get improved service quality, you get healthier workplaces and cultures, and you build greater organizational resilience. You can handle more things as you go through that process. So as you do it, you're also able to protect your mission, right? A healthy staff sustains healthy organizations. When employees feel heard and trusted, their trust in you increases, and their willingness to follow the plan that you lay out increases. Your mission impact grows when your workforce is supported. Burnout is inevitable. It's going to happen, right? The key is, can we prevent it from getting to the place where people are on empty and they can't get back to where they need to be refueled? If you can redesign your systems in a way where there's these constant fuel ups over time, you then can put yourself in a situation where you can handle the burnout in your organization, fill those empty roles, and stop losing your best people. If you're interested in how Pulse for Good helps organizations gather feedback, please visit our website to learn more. And if you happen to find good ways to refuel your organizations over time, please share it with the larger community, as we're all struggling to try and find the right ways. And while that way may not be the exact same for my organization, hearing positive experiences of how you're tackling burnout can ignite ways and ideas for us to tackle our issues. Thanks for watching our webinar, and reach out if you have any questions.